Sarah Jensen had always been the afterthought of the Jensen family. At 34, she carried the label of failure, like an unwanted tattoo, etched into every holiday dinner, every casual remark, every side glance from her parents. To them, Sarah was the girl who never lived up to her potential, the one who played around with properties, while her brother, Ryan, was the shining star, the polished lawyer with a firm, the golden child with credentials that impressed everyone at cocktail parties. But on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message that would ignite the fracture lines in their family into an earthquake. "I went ahead and sold that old downtown building of yours for $200,000. It was worthless anyway, and the family needs the money. You should be thanking me. Ryan." Sarah's hands froze above the screen, her heartbeat drumming in her ears. For a moment, she thought it had to be some sort of twisted joke. The old downtown building he referred to wasn't just any property. It was a historic brick structure in the heart of the financial district, one she had purchased years ago with cash, an anchor in her carefully built real estate empire. Worthless? If only Ryan knew. The building had recently been appraised at $8.5 million, and it wasn't her only crown jewel. Behind the quiet facade of being just a property manager, Sarah commanded a portfolio of apartment complexes, commercial leases, and short-term rentals that poured steady passive income into her accounts every month. She was, by every definition, a self-made millionaire. But no one in her family ever cared to ask. She reread the message, her shock quickly giving way to something colder: clarity. Ryan hadn't just crossed a line. He had forged her authority, taken something that wasn't his, and dismissed her value as if she were invisible. And the worst part? He thought he'd get away with it. For Ryan, Sarah would always be the little sister who failed. For Sarah, Ryan had just made the costliest mistake of his life. The Jensen family dinners had always carried an unspoken hierarchy. Ryan at the head of the conversation, dazzling their parents with legal jargon they barely understood. Chloe, his wife, chiming in with perfectly timed compliments. Frank and Helen nodding proudly, sipping wine, basking in the glow of their successful son. And Sarah, relegated to the margins, listening, invisible, the afterthought. Tonight was no different. Or so it seemed. As Sarah walked through the front door, the smell of roast beef and red wine filled the air. Laughter spilled from the dining room. She stepped inside to find the family already mid-celebration, glasses raised. "To Ryan," Frank toasted, his voice booming with paternal pride. The negotiator of the century, selling that worthless downtown dump and saving the family from financial strain. Ryan grinned, leaning back in his chair with the smugness of a man who thought he had outsmarted the world. Chloe clapped lightly, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light. Sarah slid into her seat quietly, her eyes scanning the table. The words "worthless downtown dump" echoed in her head like a slap. That building, the jewel of her portfolio, the anchor of her strategy, dismissed as trash. Ryan leaned forward, cutting a steak with theatrical precision before announcing, "I've already put the $200,000 straight into the firm. It'll buy us a few more months of operations, maybe even pull us back from the brink. Honestly, you should all be thanking me." Helen gasped with admiration, as if Ryan had just saved the family from ruin. "Oh, Ryan, you're brilliant. Always thinking ahead." Sarah's stomach tightened. Brilliant? He had committed fraud, stolen her property, and gambled it on his collapsing law firm. Yet here he was, being celebrated like a hero. Frank turned to Sarah with his familiar, patronizing smile. "And you, dear, you should learn from your brother. Not everyone has the skill to negotiate like that. You've always been steady, but not exactly ambitious." It wasn't just dismissal. It was contempt disguised as fatherly advice. Sarah forced a smile, her hands tightening around the stem of her glass. She could feel every old wound reopening. The years of being underestimated, of her parents introducing her as our daughter who manages apartments, while parading Ryan as our brilliant lawyer. But this time, the script was about to flip. Sarah didn't say a word. She didn't need to, yet. She simply observed, her silence sharper than any accusation. Let them revel in their false triumph. The reckoning was coming. The room fell silent when Sarah finally placed her wine glass down with deliberate calm. For hours, she had let them talk, let them bask in the false glory of Ryan's heroic deal. But enough was enough. Her voice was even, almost gentle, so at odds with the storm she was about to unleash. I should probably clear up a small misunderstanding, she began. That building you called a worthless dump, I bought it outright, in cash. And as of last month, it's valued at $8.5 million. Forks froze midair. Chloe's smile stiffened. Helen blinked rapidly, as if her daughter had just spoken in another language. Ryan gave a sharp laugh, waving his hand dismissively. Don't be ridiculous, Sarah. You wouldn't know what to do with $8 million if it fell into your lap. Besides, I had legal authority. I filed the power of attorney myself. Sarah tilted her head slightly, her eyes glinting. Yes, about that power of attorney. The one you forged. The word forged landed like a crack of thunder. Ryan's face drained of color, but he tried to recover with bravado. That's absurd. You can't prove. I don't have to. Sarah cut him off, her tone firm for the first time that night. Attorney Mitchell already has the documents. He confirmed what I suspected. You committed fraud. You falsified my signature. And you stole from me. Silence engulfed the dining room. Even the grandfather clock in the hall seemed to stop ticking. Helen's voice quavered. Sarah, surely you don't mean to involve outsiders in a family matter. Sarah's gaze didn't waver. Fraud, forgery, grand larceny. Those aren't family matters, Mother. Those are felonies. Frank's hand trembled as he set down his glass. Sarah, think carefully about what you're saying. But Ryan had already risen from his chair, his bravado collapsing into panic. You wouldn't dare press charges. You wouldn't destroy your own family. Sarah leaned back, calm and unshaken. You already did that the moment you assumed I was too small, too weak, too worthless to fight back. I'm not the one on trial here. You are. The roles had shifted. For the first time, Ryan wasn't the celebrated son, the invincible lawyer, the golden boy. He was the criminal. And Sarah, the sister they had dismissed for decades, now held the power of judge, jury, and executioner. The story hit the headlines like wildfire. Prominent attorney caught in $8.5 million property fraud. Forgery, fraud, and family betrayal. The Jensen scandal. Within 48 hours, Ryan's face was splashed across every local news station and shared thousands of times on social media. His law firm's phone lines went dead. Clients pulling out in waves, staff resigning, creditors circling like vultures. The once proud Jensen name, which Frank and Helen had worn like a badge of honor at every neighborhood gathering, was now dragged through the mud, dissected by strangers on Twitter threads and Facebook comments. Ryan's fall was brutal and public. Overnight, the golden boy became a disgraced lawyer awaiting criminal trial. At the family's next gathering, the atmosphere was no longer celebratory, but suffocating. Frank sat hunched, the lines in his face deeper than Sarah had ever seen. Helen's eyes were red-rimmed from sleepless nights. Sarah, Helen whispered, reaching across the table with trembling hands. He's your brother. Families survive mistakes, even terrible ones. You can't just let him be destroyed like this. Think of what people will say about us, Frank added, his tone carrying the authority of a father, used to being obeyed. Drop the charges. For the family's sake. We'll handle Ryan ourselves, quietly. Don't drag this through the courts any longer." Sarah's expression remained composed, though her chest tightened. For years, this was the pattern. Every wrong Ryan committed was smoothed over, hidden, excused. Every misstep of hers, magnified. Now, even theft on a grand scale was being repackaged as a family matter. She met their pleading eyes, her voice steady. "No, this isn't about family loyalty. This is about accountability. He stole from me because he believed I was nothing, that I was too insignificant, too worthless to defend what was mine. If I let him walk away, then you're right. I would be worthless." Helen recoiled as if struck. Frank's jaw tightened, but he had no rebuttal. For the first time, the old weapons of guilt, shame, and reputation failed them. Sarah rose from the table, her voice final. Ryan made his choices. Now he will face his consequences. And with that, she walked away, not as the overlooked daughter, but as the woman who had finally claimed her power. The knock at the door came like a gunshot. 3 heavy raps that silenced the tense living room. Frank stood, confused, while Helen's face drained of color. Before anyone could react, the door swung open and uniformed officers stepped in. "Ryan Jensen," the lead officer called out, voice clipped, professional. Ryan shot up from the sofa, his eyes darting from Sarah to his parents. "This is a mistake," he stammered, his lawyer's instinct kicking in as he tried to command authority. "You can't just walk in here without—" The officer cut him off. "We have a warrant. Fraud, forgery, grand larceny. You know the charges." The handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists, the sound echoing through the room like a verdict already passed. Frank shouted. Helen sobbed. Chloe covered her mouth in horror. Ryan twisted, looking at Sarah with a mix of rage and desperation. "You're destroying me," he spat, as the officers pulled him toward the door. "You'll regret this, Sarah. You'll regret—" The door slammed behind him. Silence swallowed the house. Later that evening, Sarah found Alex alone on the porch, his face buried in his hands. Chloe was inside consoling her parents, but Alex, always quieter, more pragmatic, sat apart, the weight of responsibility pressing hard on him. When Sarah stepped outside, he looked up, shame flickering in his eyes. "I co-signed the lease for Ryan's office," he admitted. "He begged me, said it was temporary, just to get the firm through a rough patch. Now the firm's collapsing, and the landlord's already calling. That debt, it'll come after me, after Chloe, after our kids." Sarah studied him for a moment. Unlike Ryan, Alex wasn't arrogant. He wasn't cruel. He had been dragged into the storm, but he wasn't the one who created it. "You won't have to worry about the lease," Sarah said at last, her voice steady. "I own that building. As of tonight, the lease is terminated. You're free of it." Alex blinked, stunned. "You'd do that, after everything Ryan put you through." "I'm punishing Ryan, not you," Sarah replied simply. "Chloe and you weren't part of the theft. You don't deserve to carry his burden." For a long moment, Alex said nothing. Then, slowly, he shook his head. Disbelief etched into his features. "You know, I always thought you were just the quiet one. The weak one. The one Ryan had to look out for." His voice dropped, thick with humility. "But you're not. You're stronger than any of us ever realized. You're not the person I thought you were, Sarah. You're so much more." Sarah allowed herself the faintest smile. For years they had underestimated her. Now, finally, they were beginning to see her for who she truly was. The trial came and went like a storm. No one in the Jensen family could escape. Ryan Jensen, once the pride of Frank and Helen, stood in court shackled by the weight of evidence. The forged signatures, the fraudulent contracts, the falsified filings. Each piece laid bare his arrogance. In the end, he pled guilty. His law license was stripped. His firm dissolved in disgrace. The judge ordered $8.5 million in restitution, an impossible figure for a man who now had nothing. Frank and Helen sat in the gallery that day, their hands clutching each other, broken. For years, they had shielded Ryan from every consequence, smoothing over every transgression. Now, they were powerless, forced to watch the collapse of the son they had placed on a pedestal. Sarah didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply watched, calm and steady, the way she had learned to survive all those years of dismissal. Justice was being served, not out of vengeance, but necessity. 2 years passed. Sarah's life had only grown stronger. Her portfolio expanded into new markets. Her passive income multiplied. More importantly, she had found peace, not in revenge, but in finally living unapologetically in her truth. One autumn evening, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Sarah. The voice on the other end was hoarse, weighted with exhaustion. It's me, Ryan. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Sarah could hear faint background noise, a halfway house maybe, or the distant echo of a shared payphone. I owe you an apology, Ryan finally said. I see it now. All the things you built, all the things I mocked. I thought you were small, powerless, but I was the fool. Everything I know about investing, about assets, about real value, I learned by watching you. Even from prison, I studied. I realized you were the one I should have looked up to all along. Sarah closed her eyes. For years, she had carried the burden of being underestimated, dismissed, mocked. And now, at last, the very brother who once saw her as worthless was admitting the truth. She didn't gloat. She didn't soften either. Her voice was calm, resolute. You had to lose everything to see what was in front of you all along. There was a pause. Ryan's voice cracked. I know, and I'm sorry. Sarah ended the call with a quiet exhale. It wasn't reconciliation, not fully, but it was validation. Proof that she had not only reclaimed her dignity, but also forced her family to confront the lesson they had never wanted to learn, that true worth isn't loud. It doesn't demand recognition. It stands, quietly unshakable, until the day no one can ignore it anymore.